Welcome all, this is Karen Singer here at Undead Storyteller with 3 new stories for you, these being scary shadow people encounters. I'm sure anyone, and this is myself included on this one, who has encountered one of these entities can vouch for the unnerving sensation being in the presence of such a being can bring. Thank you all for listening. I hope you all enjoy these recollections, and if you do, please make sure to hit like and subscribe to show your support for the channel and help it keep moving forward. Don't forget to hit that notification bell also, so that you never miss out on new creepy content. Now, without further ado, get ready to embrace the terror, everyone, and off we go. This happened in August of 1998. My father had been battling lymphoma for about 8 months, and while he appeared to be in remission, the lymphoma came back 8 days after his blood test showed him being cancer-free. Within a week, he had passed. The night before he passed, he was admitted to the hospital. Not wanting him to be alone, my grandmother and I took the first shift of staying up with him. The following morning at 7, my mom and aunt came and I dropped my grandmother off at her house, then went back home to get some sleep. My then husband kept our 16-month-old daughter busy while I rested, but I could hear them in the living room. Our 2 German shepherds were napping with me, but the bedroom door was open so they could go in and out. We had curtains on a slider, but they weren't blackout ones, so the room wasn't totally dark. I passed out almost immediately. I wasn't just exhausted from staying up all night, but because my parents had relied on me heavily as an only child when my dad got sick. My mom had a hard time coping and was incredibly depressed, so many of the things that they needed to deal with, such as doctor's appointments and obtaining information, I handled. I was also working full-time and going to college full-time, and we had our toddler at home. At some point in the late morning or very early afternoon, something woke me. I wasn't sure what it was, but I looked over at my bedside clock, then back up at the ceiling, debating whether I should go ahead and get up or not. I could hear my husband and daughter in the living room, and the dogs were no longer in the bedroom. I felt strange, like something was wrong. Wrong beyond what was happening with my dad, but like when I was a small child, terrified of the dark. Only it wasn't dark at all. It was midday. I became aware of a soft clicking sound. It took me a few seconds to realize that it was unfamiliar. At that moment, I saw him peek around the corner from the hallway, upside down on his hands and knees on my ceiling. He was a man, only 2.5 to 3 feet tall, wearing a suit and a brimmed hat. While he was 3-dimensional, it was like he was made from shadow. At first, I just stared at him in disbelief. Then that morphed into a terror so profound I could not move or scream. He crawled into the room like he wasn't expecting to be seen, and once he was a few feet inside, he looked down in my direction, then stopped as if in surprise. I think his visibility to me shocked him. He then began crawling closer to my bed, still looking down at me the entire time as if now he was curious about how such a thing could be. Not to say that sometimes these things want to be seen, but I am certain that they choose whether they can be seen or not, and this being had clearly intended to stay hidden. Now he wanted to know why I could see him anyway. I tried again to scream or to move, but I was still frozen in that debilitating state of fear and disbelief at what was happening. I told myself in my head that I must be dreaming, although I did not feel as if I were dreaming, and on willing myself to wake up, nothing changed. All the while, I could hear my husband and daughter still watching TV. Suddenly the phone rang, and my husband got up to answer it. Apparently that snapped me out of my paralyzed state, and I sat straight up in bed. The shadow thing was gone, as was the clicking sound. When I looked at my bedside clock again, only a couple of minutes had passed. Then my husband came into the room, and I knew why before he even said anything. My aunt was on the phone to tell me that my dad was gone. The Shadow Man encounter was instantly put out of my mind while we went to the hospital, and the next few days were spent dealing with funeral arrangements and grief. I remember consciously telling myself that it was a dream, and that I had to believe that as the truth, or I would never be able to sleep again. I did my best to push it out of my memory. That was over 20 years ago. Recently I thought about it again, however, when my now adult daughter had a sleep paralysis incident and experienced the old hag phenomenon. Those occurred only at one specific location, never before or since, but it was when she told me of her experience that it brought back these recollections for me. I believe that this was a non-human entity. I think that these entities feed on human emotions, such as pain or fear, and that this specific entity fed off of sadness and grief, which was very much present in the equation due to the situation with my dad. I think that they can be seen when they want to be, as I mentioned before, but that for some unknown reason I was able to see him regardless. I have a theory that these are the same creatures that Christians call demons, and that Muslims call jinn, and that while some are malevolent, others are not necessarily so. I'm not sure what the one I encountered was, and he certainly didn't cause me grief, but without question was there to feed off of it. This has been an ongoing series of encounters taking place over the last decade of my life. I'm a believer in the paranormal world due to other experiences, but I'm also open to the fact that this could just be sleep deprivation or stress-induced. Still, the amount of times that I've dealt with this, and the fact that I have been consciously awake each time, makes me wonder. I'm 30 years old now, and my first encounter began in 2012, while I was a freshman at college. I was on academic probation over a long weekend, so the rest of my roommates were gone and I was stuck in the dorm by myself. One night after I had finished my homework and was tired of mindlessly scrolling through my phone, I became unusually tired and fell asleep in my bed around 8 p.m. with the lights on. After about 20 minutes into my snooze, I got this feeling like I wasn't alone and I jolted awake. Our beds were over our desks in a bunk configuration. I rolled over and looked into the middle of the room below me and was shocked to see a humanoid figure curled up in the fetal position. I thought I was dreaming, so I just continued to blink and rub my eyes and was telling myself to wake up. But soon I realized that I wasn't dreaming. After about 30 seconds, it seemed to register that I was staring at it, and it slowly stood up. I was utterly frozen. It looked just like a person, but with no face or hair, clothes, no real features at all. Just an opaque human form. Nothing discernible about it other than its generalized shape. Once it reached its full height, it was close to 6 feet tall. It began walking in my direction. Nothing felt evil or malicious about it, but I didn't want to test that theory. Unfortunately, it was between me and the door, and I had to run past it to escape my room. I yelled at it to stop approaching me. It came within 3 feet before my fight-or-flight instinct overrode me being frozen in fear. I then jumped from my bunk onto the floor and bolted past it. It never reached out or interfered with me running out into the halls, filled with pure adrenaline. I calmed myself down and went to find one of my friends down the hall who had also stayed behind for the weekend. I didn't tell said friend about my experience, not wanting to sound insane. I chalked it up to stress with school and being tired, but unfortunately, no matter what it was, I still had to eventually make my way back to my dorm to sleep, and I had to do it alone. I finally summoned up the courage after a few hours. I entered my room, and nothing was there. I stayed awake with the lights on the rest of the night, constantly uneasy even though nothing else happened. Fast forward to 2013. Every year we were required to switch rooms, so my roommate and I had recently done just that. Nothing happened until late fall. This time, all of my roommates were present. It was a school night, and all 3 of us had just begun to fall asleep. Once again, I got that uneasy feeling. I rolled over like before, this time to find the humanoid figure standing near the head of my bed, reaching toward me. I freaked out and woke up my roommates, who threw on the light. As soon as the darkness was taken from the room, it disappeared. Justifiably annoyed, my roommates told me that I was just imagining things, that I needed to go to sleep. These encounters occurred 2 more times while I was in college, with the last incident taking place during my senior year. It was the same routine repeated. I fell asleep, then woke up with the same uneasy feeling. That night, without meaning to, I had left my closet door open, and as I peered into it, I saw the figure again, just standing there, staring into me. I fixated on it, telling myself that it was just my overactive imagination. But as I continued wishing it away, it stepped out of the closet and, like the other times, began approaching me. I screamed at it, demanding that it not take another step, and it vanished into nothingness. Not long after that, I graduated and joined the military. I was still under the belief that it was nothing more than college-induced stress. I felt like the encounters would end on their own, especially with me leaving my dorm for my first duty station in Florida. At that point, I was engaged to my now wife, and we had 2 dogs. No matter which house or apartment that we would move to, the shadow people would continue to follow me. I would never be able to escape the horrifying encounters. It would always start with my dogs growling at our bedroom doors, followed by full manifestations. My wife would awake to me shouting at something, ordering it not to come any closer and to leave my family and I alone. It would both terrify and confuse my wife, as she's never been able to see the figures for herself. With each visitation, the entity would come a little closer before disappearing after my confrontations. It would always get close, but it would never quite reach me. Somehow I could sense that it was never actually the same shadow person, or perhaps I could say that its intent was never the same. Each time it appeared to me, it grew more foreboding, its will toward me intensifying in its negativity. There was also this almost gravitational pull that it had to it, but not as if it were drawing me to it, more like the other way around. It was being drawn to me. This happened 5 more times between 2017 and 2019. That said, allow me to lead now into my final encounter with these shadow people. It happened in 2020. My wife was pregnant with my son at the time, and I was a month out from deployment. The last encounter was different from the rest. It was the single most terrifying, stress-inducing paranormal event that I have ever witnessed. I was asleep with my wife in bed. I had only been asleep for an hour when I woke up because I couldn't breathe. I could physically feel that there were 2 hands wrapped around my neck and weight pressing down on my chest. As I struggled for oxygen, I saw the entity above me actively trying to suffocate me. I hadn't yet registered that a shadow person was what it was. I thought it to be a home invader. I wrestled with it, could feel it and grab it. Once I got the upper hand, it sprung to the bedroom floor and crawled under my bed. My wife was already awake, as I had been thrashing around. I still thought that it was an intruder and was trying to find a weapon. I told my wife to escape the house and call the cops. She of course refused and told me that it was all a bad dream. Then I looked under the bed to find nothing. My wife told me that I was just stressed with the upcoming deployment. I was incredibly embarrassed on top of being utterly terrified. I still saged the house just in case, and tried to work on my stress using a variety of methods. I haven't had another encounter since. I know this could have all been psychological, but that doesn't take away from the emotions felt in those moments. I'm never half awake. I've always been fully alert while experiencing these encounters. I've never dealt with any troubles such as sleep paralysis or sleepwalking. I don't share this story unless I know the person or people I'm telling it to are believers in the paranormal. I know to the ears of a skeptic my ordeal seems completely fabricated, and I wouldn't believe it either. I know what I experienced, though, and I know how it made me feel. When I first moved into the apartment that I'm currently living in, everything was fine. The only exception to this was occasionally at night, in the dark, I would see a shadow in front of my bedroom door. I tried to make out the details of the figure, but no matter how close I've been able to get at it, it has no real features. It only has shape. The form of a tall man wearing a hat and a long coat. Mind you, I'm in South America, and it's not common to see people wearing coats like that at all. I've never interacted with the shadow. Sometimes I'll feel uneasy, but will deliberately think of something else as I actively ignore the presence of the being. It's always in front of my bedroom door, however, so to go in and out of my room, I have to cross paths with it. My apartment is essentially a long corridor. The front door is immediately followed by the kitchen door on the right, then the living room, what used to be my mom's bedroom door, then mine, and the bathroom at the end of the hall with its door facing the entrance door at the other end. When I'm in my room looking out, there is only a blank white wall with nothing on it or around the area which could be mistaken for the shape of a human being. For the longest time, I thought that it was a figment of my imagination, or perhaps some sort of hallucinatory indicator that one day I might go mad entirely. Then, a high school friend of mine put me at ease one day when she confirmed that she could see it too. Everyone else has dismissed it, or claimed that I've been making it up. Granted, the friend I'm mentioning here could be considered very woo-woo, as it were. She's extremely spiritual, into Wicca and other occult practices. She may have been influenced by the fact that I told her about the shadow before she supposedly saw it. I will say, though, that she was truly, genuinely creeped out. She used to ask to use a detour coming home from school when she was walking with us because she wanted to avoid a certain cemetery. She always claimed to feel the presence of the spirits there and told us that if she wasn't careful, that they would try to follow her home. I never saw the eyes or smile of the shadow figure. It never said anything to me, not that I could hear. I could never make out the color of its coat, and I never considered what kind of hat that it was wearing. But it was undoubtedly a tall man, wearing both of those clothing items. I did nothing to get rid of it, but after a while I noticed it doesn't appear there anymore, as if nothing was ever there.